Thank you so much, Dr. Sublette, for joining us today. It's really an honor to have you here. You are one of the most trusted advisors that I have and my business partner for over 20 years. And so it's really an honor to get to commemorate and kind of record this conversation with you. Um, I know you need no introduction because you're a superstar in the field. But for those of you that aren't familiar, this is Dr. Kerry Sublette. He is retired recently from the University of Tulsa, where he was an emeritus professor of chemical engineering and a Sarkis professor of environmental engineering. He has over 40 years experience in a wide variety of bioengineering problems, including biodegradation of hydrocarbons, biotreatment of various hazardous waste streams. He's worked a ton in bioreactor design and scale up, design and operation of pilot and full-scale bioreactors and other bioremediation systems. And he's definitely an expert on remediation of brine impacted sites. So thank you, Kerry, for taking time to be here with us today.
Well, thank you for that introduction, Dora.
So I am excited to get to record some of your amazing wisdom that we can share with everyone. I know that you give this to me on a regular basis, for which I'm grateful, but I'm excited to share it on, different media outlets so other people can get to enjoy the wisdom that you have.
I hope I can rise to your standards.
I have no doubt. So, I guess the first question I have for you is you've got a lot of experience in our field and you've been teaching engineering courses for over 40 years. When you have new graduates that you see entering the field, is there something that you hope they'll take from either your classes or from lessons learned to be able to implement this in the field?
Um, well, there's probably a lot I could say there, but just to touch on a few things that are things that I try to emphasize with my students as they undergo their training, do their dissertations or master's theses, research, or and then get out into the real world. One of the things I always tell them is try as best you can not to build a silo around yourself. You know, don't be a one-trick pony. Be flexible, and never pass up an opportunity to learn something new, especially if it's something that you can get some hands-on experience with, especially particularly out in the field. And as you and I both know, you know, there's no substitute for actually doing some of these tasks related to either sampling or doing a remediation. There's no substitute for actually getting out and doing it in the field to really understand, you know, how these concepts are implemented in the real world. So I always encourage them, you know, just get as much experience as you can, you know, here at the university or you know, in your first job, you know, volunteer for everything. Go out and learn as much as you can. In, you know, as far as my graduate students are concerned, you know, a great number of my graduate students did field work. There were a few in doing bioreactor research that maybe didn't get to do so, but most of them were involved with sampling to one degree or another, whether it was some cases soil, some cases wastewater or surface water or groundwater. And one of the things that again, this is just one of those high points that I try to impress upon the students, particularly in sampling, is pay attention to detail because the detail is very, very important. And that probably comes from kind of one of my little side interests over the years is participating in environmental litigation as an expert witness, and I really know and have really seen in my early career just how important the detail is in terms of being able to get useful information from the samples that you're taking. And all of our projects, all of our field projects, as you know, at TU since way back in the 90s, you know, involve some sort of molecular biological tools. And it was always my hope that the students carried with them the usefulness of these tools, as they got out into their first jobs and to, keep up with all the new developments and the tools and the applications that are always coming along. And I think we've seen that I certainly succeeded with several of the students because they're now in my clients. So, and I guess one of the last things I would talk about, I always worried about in field work. I mean, we did sampling sometimes in some, you know, n- I don't want to say dangerous locations, but certainly locations that had some sort of safety concern associated with them. And you may know that in the last 6 or 7 years that I was at the university, I also taught the senior chemical process safety class. So always mindful of that. And one of the things that I try very hard to teach my students in the classroom and in the field was to always take responsibility for their own safety. And by that, I mean, don't depend ultimately on someone else to keep you safe. I don't make any assumptions about someone else is doing that, so I don't have to worry about it. And I'll give you just a quick little example. Let's suppose you're in a confined space and there's a valve for some fluid line that definitely needs to be locked and tagged out before you enter that confined space. Otherwise, you're going to be in a world of hurt if somehow that valve gets turned on. So part of the safety protocol for that process would be to lock and tag out that valve, but maybe that's been assigned to somebody else. Um, and I would ask the students then, are you going to, that's your friend over there. You know he's competent, and that's his responsibility to lock out and tag out that valve. But are you going to bet your life on it? So you check it yourself. And if your friend doesn't understand, you've just set a good example for him that he should be taking responsibility for his own safety as well. So there's an old adage that a engineer nearing retirement gave me a long time ago when I was just starting out in the field that you get what you inspect, not what you expect. And I've remembered that for decades, and I tell as many people as I can, that should be your motto, particularly when it comes to your safety. Don't make any assumptions about what's keeping you safe. Take responsibility for it yourself.
That's one of my favorite sayings, Carrie, and this saying from him to you lives on at MI because we say that in reporting and in the lab is you get what you inspect, not what you expect. And so we try to take that into account every day. So I think a lot of the things you just told us here are good, not just for students, but in everyday practical application, even for those of us that have been in the field for longer. So thank you for sharing that with us. One of the things I know you've invented a lot of things over the years. You're very innovative, very creative, and have truly had a passion for environmental remediation and cleanup. And I respect that so much. But one of the most important inventions I feel like you have are, of course, the biotrap samplers. So I want to say congratulations on over 25 years with being the inventor of the biotrap and the bioset beads. And we use these very often in site assessment and remedial practices. They've been used for decades now in our industry, and they're such a versatile tool with a lot of applications. Is there a favorite use that you have for this particular technology?
Well, like you said, there are a lot of applications, and I would like to give credit to MI's clients for coming up with some of those applications. Sometimes thinking of things that they can do with the bow traps that we didn't think about that, but that's always a lot of fun. But I think for sure my favorite application's got to be stable isotope probing. And for anybody that's listening to this that doesn't know what that's all about, we can put a C13 version of a contaminant of concern on the bioset beads and biotraps, incubate those in whatever environment you're interested in, and look for the incorporation of carbon-13 into inorganic carbon or into the biomass. And if we see that, then we have positively identified biodegradation potential for that compound in that environment under the actual conditions that exist there. So that's definitely been one of my favorites. But I have another favorite that doesn't get used as much. I guess it's kind of researchy, um, and that's using the biotraps for basically mining degraders. We've had several clients at MI that have used this in this way over the years. And one of the ones I remember was actually a faculty member at the University of Tennessee who was interested in isolating atrazine degraders and had access to an atrazine contaminated soil. And so we helped him load bioset beads with atrazine and put into a biotrap and buried in the contaminated soil. And then when he retrieved them, and then isolated atrazine degraders from the beads versus the soil, he was able to get many more unique atrazine degraders from the bioset beads than he could directly from the soil. So that was one of the first applications along that line, and that really opened my eyes. And since then, there have been several similar applications, and as I said, it's kind of researchy, so that's probably one of the reasons it doesn't get used as much as I'd like to see it. But it is a favorite of mine, just kind of geeky, I guess.
I'm right there with you. I love stable isotope probing, and I love hearing new creative ways to use a tool that I think is so versatile. So it always excites me when we get those types of calls. So I would encourage anyone listening that if you have creative ideas and as new generations come in and think of new uses for these tools in remediation or in other fields, to reach out, because that's something that Kerry and I would love to have a conversation about moving forward. So thank you, Kerry, for sharing that with us. So you've been involved with Microbial Insights almost since not long after the start with Dr. White. And so you've seen kind of the evolution of what we've done, the growth of the company over the years, and you've been a huge part in helping us to get to where we are today. And I just wonder from your perception, because you've been so close, but able to also observe us through a lot of different scenarios, what you see as the most important impact that Microbial Insights makes on the environmental community.
Well, I think back as you were saying that, Dora, as you were asking that, I was thinking back on, my first interaction with David White and doing research with him. And then, of course, learning about microbial insights as a business. And one of the things that was extremely helpful to me in my research at the time, this goes back a long way, but I think it's true, has been true every day since then. And that is that um, MI gave me access to the latest cutting edge application of molecular biological tools, which I didn't there in a chemical engineering department at TU. I didn't have access to that, and certainly to do it myself would have taken a lot of expense and a lot of time and a lot of learning. So I was very happy to have access to Microbial Insights to access those tools. And then as I continued to work with MI, I certainly saw for myself and saw, especially as applying the data to my own projects, how reliable the data was and how short the turnarounds were to get that information back. So I think that's extremely important to the environmental community. It was extremely important to me at the time, and also when I was in a learning phase myself, I got a lot of help from David and everybody else at MI in interpreting the results and planning how to do the sampling to get the questions answered that I needed answered. And I think that's the same today. The only thing that I might add to that list, I mean, that was when I was first starting out, and I got all of those benefits from working with MI, which is what drew me to working closer, well, with MI. MI provides all those benefits today, and the only thing different that you're doing today that you're, in concept anyway, that y- that you weren't doing back then is you weren't doing a lot of education back then. You all were new and just getting the lab up and going, etc. But today, MI provides a lot of education and training, webinars, in-house workshops, seminars, publications. I think that's extremely valuable to the environmental community. You can go to MI's website and see all the past webinars and publications, case studies, etc. If you want to learn about molecular biological tools, that's the ideal place to start right there.
Thank you, Kerry. That means a lot to know that you value that resource. It does take time and energy, and we appreciate our team that works so hard to keep all of that up to date. So I appreciate that you value that and use it. One of the things that really has been important on the education piece, and I think especially in the climate we're in today is really critical, is, stakeholders are more limited now financially and worried about cost savings and things for they move to the future. And it makes me think about, we've had to do a lot of education for regulatory acceptance, and we also have to do a lot of education for stakeholders to understand how to use these tools. Are there things that you wish stakeholders knew more about, or advice that you would have for me on what we should share better with stakeholders to help them understand the value of using these types of techniques?
Well, participating in workshops with MI and in-house seminars, etc. Um, One of the things that I have seen, and I know you and I have discussed this, um, is there's some people who don't know MI see MI as just a laboratory. They're going to submit a sample, ask for an analysis, and they're going to get a result back. That's what happens when you use a chemical lab, for example, and you want a VPH analysis. But with MIS, it's not like that. And it needs to be unlike that because these tools are even, they're more and more people are becoming aware of these tools and understanding their applications, but there's still a lot of folks out there that don't. And I think some people feel reluctant maybe to utilize MI services if they don't, if someone hasn't clued them in, um, because they think, well, I'm just going to get an answer, but I won't know what it means. And what I wish that stakeholders understood more was how much help they can get from microbial insights. If they don't know where to sample, don't know what to sample for, they can get somebody knowledgeable on the phone at MI and describe their site and what's going on at the site and what they want to know about what's going on at the site. And MI can be extremely helpful in um, uh, advising them on what they need to sample for, where they need to sample. And then after they've done the sampling and after the analysis has been done, then MI can help them understand the results. They're not alone. So I wish that they could see MI more as a potential team member as opposed to simply a vendor.
I think all of us at MI would say that's the best part of our job is to be team members with these companies and get to interpret and apply the data because that's a lot of fun for us, but also it reassures us of the value of what we're doing and the contribution that we can make. So I appreciate you saying that, Kerry, because it really is something that we enjoy in our job and I would like to do more of. And that makes me think about, so you're kind of nerdy like I am when it comes to bugs, and we're thinking about microorganisms and how they apply. Is there something that's really interesting to you that you'd like to share about a microbe, or is there a favorite microbe or anything that you'd like to share with people?
A favorite microbe? Um, Gee, what can I say? I love them all. Um, but one thing I like about microbiology uh, is that when it comes to what a microorganism can do or may do, um, you should never say never. Never say, "Hey, that's never going to happen." You know, I'm old enough. You can see the white hair. I'm old enough to remember when, as a young man, people would get up and talk about biodegradation of petroleum hydrocarbons and talk about how it cannot happen under anaerobic conditions. You have to have aerobic conditions to get hydrocarbon degradation. And boy, did that ever teach me to never open my mouth like that. Um, the whenever if you say a microorganism or there's not a microorganism out there that'll ever do X, Y, Z, as long as it's thermodynamically possible, or there's a thermodynamically possible way for it to happen, which we may not even know yet. Um, there's probably going to be a microorganism out there that's as part of its day-to-day life is doing that or can do that. So that's what I like most about microorganisms. It's just, we've learned so much, but we've got so much more to learn. Um, and I just love it. And I still hear, um, hear some people say, that, well, this can't be done, by a microorganism. But I would never, I've been around long enough to never say never.
And so I think people working in the space industry are definitely going to be thinking about microbes and what's happening and perfluorinated compounds. All the things we don't know yet are
That's right.
going
That's
to blow our
right.
minds. That's exciting.
And they've discovered a few things they didn't know with the space station too, didn't they? So
Yes, they have. Yep. And I think we'll continue to keep growing as we have techniques that can now be applied more effectively in these extreme environments. It's exciting to think about what we're going to learn and discover. Okay, so I'm a little hesitant to ask you this question, but I can't pass it up the opportunity to do this because I know we've traveled the world together, so I am a little scared of your stories. But do you have a funny story or a memory or anything in particular about the industry, kind of more of an open-ended question for you that you would like to share with us today?
it can't be about you.
Preferably not.
Well, I can tell you one of my favorite stories, that happened pretty early in my career. So I repeated the story, to a lot of my students over the years. And I'm not sure if I've told you about this, but um, as you know, for a long time, I did a lot of collaborative work with the Nature Conservancy at the Tallgrass Prairie Preserve, where there's a lot of oil and gas activity there. And there would occasionally be hydrocarbon spills or crude oil spills or saltwater spills, etc. So um, it was a very frequent thing for us to do to take students out to the Tallgrass Prairie to do one kind of sampling or another, or get involved in a remediation project. A lot of the students had master's or even doctoral thesis based on work they did out there. Well, so one day we were out doing some soil sampling at basically an in situ land farm there that one of my students was conducted, where there had been a pipeline break and had contaminated the soil with crude oil. And I guess we'd been at this for about a year or so. Um, so there wasn't much in the way of hydrocarbon odor left that we could detect. And why I say that, well, you'll understand in a moment. But so one of my students was basically taking a soil sample, and he was in the process of excavating a small hole. And I and one of my students were over kind of at the tailgate of my truck. I think we were labeling bags or something or other. And I looked up and looked over at the student, and there was a small hill right behind him. And I swear to God, I did not see this coming, but I looked over there and I saw three big bison bulls standing on that hill right behind the student. He didn't know it either. So I just looked over, I called his name, and I said, "Please stand up and walk straight over to me," which thankfully he did, because he kind of freaked out when he finally turned around and saw what was there. And we watched these bison, just waiting for them to leave, but they didn't leave because they were very interested in what we were doing. So they all went down there, all three of them, one at a time, and sniffed the hole, and then laid down and rolled around on the hole. All three of them. And once all three of them had done that, then they walked away and left it to us again. So that's just I always told my students about the unknown hazards of field work, and there was one right there.
Well, there's a safety concern that needs to be put into your lecture.
That's right.
Oh, that's an awesome story, Carrie. I mean, you never know what you're going to encounter out there in the field. So I really respect the field people that are out there doing this on a regular basis. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to kind of put your future goggles on a little bit and think about where we're going on the horizon. And we've made a ton of growth, as you said, and I feel like kind of like the iceberg phenomenon, we're starting to see a little bit more what's below the surface, but we have so much to learn. Are there any things that you feel would be important advancements that we need to make for environmental remediation or other things that we should do as a whole to be more effective?
Well, I think one of the most important advancements is one that MI is starting to roll out right now, and that's the ability to be able to do qPCR in the field. Um, I can remember having discussions with David White about that, about, that would be the holy grail. So being able to do qPCR in the field in real time and getting an answer and making a decision about, what to do next, I think that is extremely valuable. And as more qPCR targets become available for the field kits that MI is producing, I think there's just going to be a quantum leap in the use of qPCR and making these field decisions. I mean, I look back on the work that I did early in my career, and once I knew what qPCR was and how to use it, the thought of actually doing it in the field myself, I could not even imagine that. And I just think that's just going to be a really exciting development, and we're just scratching the surface with the applications.
I agree with you. It's been incredible to see that in our careers, right? We've seen the evolution from or the revolution from plate counts and MPN
Yeah.
bottles and trying to guess about what those trends meant to now being able to be, very practical in the application of it, no matter where we are in the world.
It's been quite a journey. I was going through some old files just the other day, looking for a photograph that I remember that I'd taken at Fort Lupton. And I ran into all the image DGGE images
Yeah.
that we had done out there. I thought, wow, things have changed.
Yeah, I remember 3 to 5 organisms was really exciting. And now I just looked at a profile yesterday, or actually this morning, for the oil and gas industry. We had 29 million identifications
Oh,
in this one
wow.
sample. Yeah.
Wow.
So exciting times.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Kerry. I mean, I feel blessed to have been lucky enough to have you as my mentor for the past 20 years. And not only that, to have you as a close personal friend. I'm lucky enough to have access to you on a regular basis. And I appreciate that you take the time to record this with me and so we can share it with, other people that aren't lucky enough to get to call you anytime they have a question.
Well, thank you, Dora. It's been a joy working with you all these years.
It's been a fun ride, Carrie, and we got so much more to do. So it's exciting times. And I know you're busy, and I hope this doesn't feel like a deposition today, that it's a little
No, no,
enjoyable.
this is much better than a deposition.
But I appreciate your time. Is there anything else that you want to go through before we close out?
Um, well, not that I can think of off the top of my head, Dora, unless you had another question.
Nope, I think that's it for me. But I do really appreciate your time and the energy that you put into MI and to this and just being available to share the wealth of knowledge that you have. So I am honored to have this time with you.
Well, thank you, Dora. Appreciate it.